What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 22 of the Club and Sub podcast. We're going to call this the Revenge Cast after we all took a collective bath last week. As usual, I'm wearing the square hat from Squares and Sharps. They give 1% of their profits to charity. Go check them out, squaresandsharps.com. A lot of great merch there. They're big friends of the pod. And so, yeah. And so, as usual, I'm your host, John Stargarian, MMA at MMA Fox, with Lags at Lags_the Capper, Quinn at Orthodox1993, Luke at SWR_betting, and possibly to be determined, C Hansen 10. We will see if he comes in tonight or not. But yeah, we'll get right to it. Skip over last week. It was a dumpster fire. Worst night of the year for me. 3 down weeks in a row. So I guess after that summer heater, it had to come back at some point. Hope we'll get it back this week, though. Not the best card we've ever had, especially in terms of name value. But, I think there's some decent spots. And so we'll jump right into it. First fight of the night, we got Yes and Ayari, Luigi Vendramini. I actually have a play on Ayari here. I played him for 1 unit at evens. Pretty much the thinking is there's not a lot of great tape on Vendramini, but what we have seen has been basically low volume, pretty weak wrestling when we've seen him try to use it, and just being very, very hittable. And so, it's possible, he hasn't fought in a couple of years, and it's possible, he's improved that wrestling and he can get Ayari to the mat, control him, get his back and sub him. But, Ayari's a brown belt. Yeah, the couple times we have seen him down, granted against Darren Till, his get-ups seem pretty good, though. And at distance, I fully trust that he's going to outland him. The truth of the matter is, if I had a better idea of where Vendramini's wrestling was at, I'd be on Ayari quite a bit bigger in this spot, to be honest. So, yeah, I'm on Ayari per unit. Like I said, not the most confident play. I think he should be a favorite. I wish we had more data, but I'm willing to fade the unknowns with Vendramini. Lags, how about you?
I actually haven't looked into this fight at all, to be honest. So it's past for me.
Quinn.
Yeah, no, I like Ayari. I'm kind of just holding out to see if I can get dog money on his line. Probably should play it soon. I like him a lot more than Vendramini here. Ayari, he's made a lot of improvements. He took 1.5 years off from his fight with Till to his fight with Stevie Ray, and you could definitely tell that he had made quite a few striking improvements. He was overextending on his punches quite a bit versus Till. Wasn't really throwing much volume at all, and then against Stevie Ray, he was actually winning a good amount of the striking exchanges, making it close. He was throwing good leg kicks, he was throwing solid jabs, he had good combinations, good uppercuts. So I really like to see that, and like what you said, what we've seen from Vendramini is he's very hittable. He doesn't really seem like he has much striking. I'm assuming he's making improvements in that area, but I really think that Ayari definitely has him beat there. And on the mat, a lot of people are on Twitter are really on Vendramini this weekend. And it's, I know he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I know he took Zaleski's back for a little bit, but Ayari, he's not a bad grappler. Every time Till took him down, he was able to pop right back up. And, when he is on his back, he's pretty active. He throws up a lot of subs. He always shrimps. He never really accepts position too much, which I really like to see. So I don't really know if how much success Vendramini's going to actually have there. Might be a bit of a long shot, but I was actually kind of looking at the Ayari sub prop. He's a brown belt under Dean Lister, and that's a pretty solid accomplishment. So yeah, I definitely like Ayari here. I do think he is the better fighter. So I'll probably end up playing him probably before the end of the day.
Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so similar to Lags, I haven't looked into this one yet, mainly just because I just didn't really see a whole lot on Vendramini, at least in terms of recent tape, and a guy who I'm largely unfamiliar with. I kind of want to have all of those most recent fights available to see where the guy's truly at. But kind of going into it, pre-fight, I was thinking a potential play on Ayari. Obviously, there needs to be analysis done and whatnot, but just kind of from optics and looking at it, I think Ayari, he's a guy who's a little underrated in my opinion. So granted, like I said, I haven't really looked into it, but just from an outside perspective, I definitely don't hate the play.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty competitive. I mean, he lost clearly, but he was pretty competitive with Till, and I can't imagine Vendramini striking's leveled up to that level. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Next up, we got Casey Kenny facing Haile Aletang. Lags, any opinion here?
So I don't have any plays here, but I kind of think this is Kenny's fight to lose. I think that the line kind of where it's sitting right now is not really accurate. I think it's super wide, to be honest. I think where it opened at like minus 200 was probably more accurate. I think Kenny's striking, honestly, is good enough here to set up the wrestling, and I think that Aletang can be controlled here for a majority of this fight. But I think for as long as this fight stays on the feet, I think that Kenny could have a little bit of trouble with Aletang. Aletang doesn't throw a lot in combinations, but he throws a lot of good looping power shots. So as long as Kenny minds his P's and Q's, I think on the feet, I think he should be able to win a decision here. But no, I think the play would be Kenny by decision. I know it's like minus 110, but for me, just a pass.
Quinn, how about you?
Yeah, no, I like Kenny here. I haven't made a play yet. Aletang, he's not a bad fighter. He's pretty well rounded. I mean, he, like Lag said, he throws in low volume, but he definitely has power behind his punches. He has nice combinations. Has a decent jab. He definitely impressed me from the tape that I saw. And he's a pretty damn good wrestler. He's got a wrestling background. But there's just some things with his like grappling that I'm just not a huge fan of. Like, I mean, he has a good double leg and he has a solid single leg, but he doesn't use jiu-jitsu at all. He doesn't pass, which is like kind of a big deal against a guy like Kenny, who's gonna make you work like throughout all of the grappling exchanges. He's just gonna make you work from bottom, from top, and he's scrambly, and he's faced definitely better grapplers in the UFC than Aletang, in my opinion. So I definitely favor Kenny here, and he's pretty hittable on the feet, but but he throws more volume, and he hasn't really been finished there yet. So I definitely think this is a pretty good fight for Kenny. Line might be a little bit wide, but I definitely do favor him. I just think it's going to be kind of hard for unless I underrate Aletang's grappling, which I don't think I do. I just think it's going to be kind of hard for him to like win minutes just taking Kenny down and just laying in his cards. So I've got Kenny here probably by decision.
Luke, how about you?
So I guess a bit of a different take here. I think Haile Aletang can make this fight a lot more competitive than a lot of people are thinking it's going to be. But then again, I've also never been big on the Casey Kenny train as well. Obviously, the guy's talented. He's got that judo, collegiate wrestling background, brown belt, and that. Dude's 14-2-1. He's 3-1 in the UFC. But in my opinion, I think there's an argument to be made that actually Casey Kenny should be 1-3 in the UFC. I think that Ray Borg fight was a robbery. I think there's an argument to be made that he actually lost to Manny Bermudez. He got obviously completely dominated by Merab. And then, looked decent against Smolka. I actually bet Smolka in that fight, and I think Smolka kind of just gave it away because he was just winging big shots and was not moving his head off the center line at all, and just literally took like 25 straight shots in a row, gets knocked down, and then ultimately gets submitted. So my big thing in this fight, it's not so much that I think that Aletang can come out here and out wrestle Casey Kenny. I don't necessarily think that's the case. My take on this fight is, can Casey Kenny come out here and out wrestle Haile Aletang? And I'm not necessarily convinced. So what that leaves me with is, if Aletang's wrestling is good enough to nullify that wrestling of Casey Kenny, we could largely be getting a striking affair here. And if that's the case, I think this fight plays a lot closer than odds indicate personally. I'm not overtly high on Casey Kenny striking. I think he does throw in combinations a little bit better. But in terms of speed and power, I actually give it to Aletang. The thing with him is he just doesn't move his head a lot, but neither does Casey Kenny. And we've seen Haile Aletang put some guys out as well too. So once again, Kenny's another one of these guys who I think is just a little bit too overvalued by the public, in my opinion. And I think we're seeing that here. So I do not have a play on Aletang right now, but I'm predicting that we probably see more Casey Kenny money continue to come in. And if I get Aletang at like plus 300, I'm firing on it, because I think that line's going to be just absolutely ridiculous.
I agree with a lot of what you said, Luke, to be honest. I honestly for most of like last week when I was looking at this card, was thinking I might like parlay up Kenny here in this fight. Then I looked pretty closely at this, and yeah, I mean, there's a couple different dynamics here. In particular, like you said, I do think if it's a standing fight for 15 minutes, I'd expect Kenny to outvolume him and likely win a decision. But Kenny has a tendency to slow. He doesn't have the best gas tank for a small guy. On the other side of that, I do think Aletang can probably take him down, but we don't really ever see Aletang wrestle until the third round because of his gas tank. And kind of to Quinn's point, like I don't really like Aletang on top because he just doesn't advance, and I've seen him put in some weird positions. And if you're going to say Kenny's elite at anything, it's probably scrambling. Like Aletang's not going to get that hand lock position Merab did to just shut that down. But like, yeah, I sort of agree. It's going to be mostly on the feet for most of 15 minutes. Like I think maybe you see Aletang try to steal around late. And kind of to your point, Luke, like, yeah, like I said, I think Kenny can string volume together a lot better. But Aletang can fucking crack, man. Like that guy, he hits pretty hard, and Kenny's there to be hit. And so it's like one of those things where it's like, you don't know how these judges score it. Like if he just wobbles him once or twice, which he may over the course of a round, he could steal around and maybe steal around grappling. So yeah, like, I mean, Kenny right now, he's trending minus 300 about, minus 320. Like, yeah, I'm with you. Like if it hits plus 300, I might take the stab as well. That said, I do think Kenny should be a significant favorite here, probably in like the minus 200 range. I just think his current line's gotten a bit out of control. But we move on. Next fight, we got Loma Luke Boonmi, Jinyu Fry. Quinn, I know you were talking about a play this week. Did you end up making one here?
No, I didn't make a play here. Like pre-tape, I was like, Frey might actually be a good like dog spot here, but I really don't like the matchup for her at all. Like she doesn't really wrestle, doesn't really use grappling at all. So like that's kind of thrown out of the table. And on the feet, like like she does have good striking, like, and she has a forward reach advantage, but she's so low volume. She doesn't really sit behind a jab. I definitely think that Loma's just gonna make her work on the feet. She's gonna use her Muay Thai. She's gonna get in the clinch and mess her up in the clinch with her knees and her elbows. She's just gonna be the busier fighter. So like, in my opinion, it's just like, like, and Frey doesn't really have much power on the feet, so it's like, how is she gonna like win rounds without like using grappling or significantly upping her striking volume? I just really don't see that. I'm not super high on Loma as like a lot of people are, but she definitely has like solid Muay Thai, and like this is, and I just think this is like a pretty solid fight for her to come out and win a decision. Frey looks to be pretty durable. But yeah, I definitely got off of the Frey train as soon as I started doing it. I just really don't think this is a very good matchup for her. So the pick is definitely Loma by decision for me.
How about you, Luke?
Yeah, so this is the first fight in my 3-knot for me, kind of similar to, not directly similar to Quinn, at least in the sense that I was kind of thinking I might be playing Jin as a dog pre-tape. And getting back into it, I actually still ended up picking her, but I just think it's one of these fights where I don't really know how you can trust either girl with your money, at least at current price. As Quinn touched on, Frey is just somewhat low volume, and she just doesn't. I guess the best way I can put it for both girls is they just really don't put stamps on fights. They're not hurting girls. There's really no these like big definitive points in any of the fights. And with that, I think Frey is actually going to be able to have a lot of success with that left hand. But I also think Loma is going to have a lot of success with that low leg kick as well. Even with the orthodox southpaw nature, Loma can still fire that thing all the way across. And Frey's leg has been beat up before. And with that, I also think both girls could also have wrestling success in this fight too. So I slightly disagree there with Quinn in the sense that I think Frey actually does have the wrestling ability to take her down if she wants to. But we've also seen Loma, even from some of those clinch exchanges, she's hit a couple nice throws, a couple nice trips, and Frey's shown she can get taken down too. So it's one of these fights where I think both girls can have varying amounts of success on the feet or on the ground. It's just one of those spots I don't really know how you can confidently put your money either way on either girl unless you're getting like a plus 150 maybe. Like if Jin hits plus 150, honestly, I'm going to be considering it just because, in my opinion, with Loma's style, that whole Muay Thai style, she likes that teep up the middle. It's a really kick-heavy style, and I think from MMA and in terms of optics, that doesn't necessarily translate. I mean, even if you look at that Albu fight, like I think that was a fight that Loma probably clearly won, but judges also that fight went to a split. One judge actually had Alexandra Albu winning that fight. So I just think it's kind of credence to that, Muay Thai style that I don't think it necessarily translates well in terms of optics as well. And Jin's a tough girl. So I think it's a pretty close fight, 50-50. If you want to give either girl a slight lean, I think that's fine, but I want my money nowhere near it.
Yeah, great. Taj said Frey style's a lot like Tyson Dam's. I agree with that a lot. And like I agree with a lot of what you said, Luke. Like I have this so like I kind of agree with both of your points here. Like I do think if it's standing, like I favor Loma pretty considerably on volume. And like Frey doesn't attempt a lot of takedowns, but I can't shake the suspicion that Frey has like a minus 400 path to victory if she took it here. Like if Frey comes out and attempts, like she's not going to do it because she doesn't, which is why I don't trust it. But like I have a feeling like if Frey puts her on the mat, like Loma's maybe not an insta sub, but she's not getting back up and is going to get put. Like I think Frey's got a decent top game, to be honest. And she's got a couple submissions by rear naked choke. Loma's been submitted by pretty low-level opposition when she first got out there. She's still very young in her mixed martial arts career. I just have this feeling if she ends up on her back, she's either going to get subbed or she's not going to get up. Now, like I said, Frey wrestles sparingly, so I don't think you can trust her to do something different here, but it's there. It's like I think I can't play Loma, period, because of that. Like it's enough that even at like plus 150, like it would just be like – it's just hard when there's a path that might be an easy path to victory for me to play the other side of that, unless it's like, 75% or something like indication. But yeah, I think Loma wins on the feet. Slightly on volume, but ultimately I think it's a close fight, and I think Frey's got the upside. Like Frey's my pick, but again, I'm not betting her because I don't really trust her to do what she needs to do. Legs, how about you?
You kind of touched everything, John, with the like why I'm not playing Loma. Kind of pre-tape, I lean Loma. I think she has the striking advantage. I think she has the advantage in the clinch. But I think that if she does get taken down, that she might find herself that entire round on her back. So that's kind of why I'm not playing Loma. And I think that now it's like minus 140. I think that's kind of crazy laying that kind of chalk with her. I think it's going to be a high variance split decision. And I think the plus money side is probably the value side here. So definitely a stay away fight for sure.
Yeah, I agree. We move on. Nice little fight here. Jordan Williams making his UFC debut at 185 against Nasruddin Imavov, also making his UFC debut at 185. I have a play here. I played Jordan Williams. It's my second time playing Jordan Williams in 3 weeks. I played him in his Contender Series fight a couple weeks back. But yeah, basically, I like Williams' game. The biggest challenge he's always going to have is that he's a diabetic and he can't really cut weight, so he's always at a pretty massive size disadvantage. But, he can be hittable early in fights. But, like, if you look at his other fights, he usually starts making reads about halfway through the first round. And once he starts finding them, his boxing is really slick. He's got decent pop. His volume's good. His cardio is good. He had that fight with Kurmagomedov. And Kurmagomedov's a pretty legit prospect. And that was an absolute war. And that told me a lot. He's won fights in Bellator. He's also a pretty good grappler, very good defensive grappler. And he's pretty dangerous on top, both with submissions and ground and pound. And then on the other side, like Imavov, the tape on him is not the best, but I haven't really liked what I've seen. It's really just a lot of like meme shit that you see from him, just like kind of like stupid KOs or finishes. Like, his last fight in Aries, he's fighting that fight, and the first 3 minutes of that round, basically every time he gets in an exchange, he's getting tagged right on the chin straight in the air, lunging into the pocket, and then he eventually catches Munir and gets on top of him and eventually finishes. But even on top, there's so much space there. Like, he doesn't look like someone who's a good grappler. I just think he's going to be – I know he's very hittable just based off his last fight. And so it's like I'm getting a guy in Williams who I know whose biggest issue is size. Imavov's been fighting at welterweights. This is going to be – and Williams is actually taller and has a reach advantage here. This is going to be like the first time in Williams' career he's not at a big size disadvantage. And I just think he's a much cleaner, much more technical striker. Like, he's not going to have volume issues. He's probably not going to be – his chin's not going to be in the air. I just think this is kind of like a Williams 70% spot here. So I played him for 2 units minus 150, and you can use the market average is about 145 on him right now, so you can get a better price than that. Lags, how about you?
So I didn't look too much into this fight, but what I did look at is I was looking at a prop similar to what we were talking about before the stream. Fight to Nos round 2 actually is at around plus 200. I think that pretty much that Imavov's, like you touched on, just kind of meme shit. Pretty much round 1. Almost all of his fights end in round 1 when he's on the winning side. And like you touched on with Williams, I think he's got solid power and he's got solid cardio and volume here. So I think that I think we see I think this is a good spot for a violence bet. I was looking at the fight to not start round 3 as well. I think that's minus 130. I think that's a good spot as well. So
yeah, I like that.
I was definitely looking to target a violence bet here, but at the moment I'm just kind of passing.
Quinn, how about you?
Yeah, no, I like Williams here. I haven't decided whether I'm going to play him or not. I need to look a little bit more at his opponent. But I love Williams' game. He's game as fuck, man. He's like a zombie. He'll walk you down. He throws high volume. He's durable as fuck. He's got, like you said, he's got fantastic defensive wrestling. He's got good cardio because he doesn't cut the weight. Like he's kind of a hard matchup for people. A lot of fighters that really can't deal with that style. I mean, he's not just going to sit at range with you. He's going to walk you down. He's going to throw heavy punches, and he's going to make it a fucking fight. And I don't even know is Ismadaev, I think that's his name.
Yeah.
Imavov.
Like he just hasn't really impressed me regionally. Like you said, he's pretty hittable on the feet. He's kind of just beating up cans. His grappling doesn't look that good, and so if he does try to wrestle Williams here, I don't really think he's going to have much success. He definitely has some power, and he seems to have his striking seems to be pretty precise when he does throw, but he does spend periods of time where he just doesn't throw at all. And like against a guy like Williams, that's not a good idea because you don't want Williams to just keep walking you down. And I don't really know if he has like the footwork to actually stop Williams' pressure here. So I definitely do not hate the play at all on Williams, especially since I think it was the stat that we constantly go back to. I think it's like 70% of fighters lose their debut. I don't know how much that is recently, because it seems like a lot of these debuting fighters have been winning some mean shit. But Williams, he's fucking durable, man. He's eating some shots. Like you said, that fight. I think it was on the Contender Series against that Russian guy. Like that guy's fucking good. He's solid. And like Williams, he stayed calm under pressure. He kept pushing forward, and he found ways to get the W. And I really, really like seeing that in fighters, fighters that like to believe in themselves too. So I'm just kind of monitoring the line, seeing where it goes. I'm gonna look at whatever that guy's name is. I'm gonna look up a couple more of his regional fights. But yeah, definitely like Williams here.
John, real quick, just to interject. So I'm looking at the props right now. So the fight to Nosta round 3 is actually minus 112.
I like that, actually. That's pretty solid. I might jump in.
What's the under 2.5?
The under 2.5.
It's got to be like minus 150 probably, right? Minus 140?
It is minus 154.
Minus 142 on mine.
That's interesting. That's not bad. Luke, what do you got for us here?
Yeah, so this is another one of the fights I didn't look into. To me, there just wasn't enough tape on Imavov to make a solid read. But as you guys kind of touched on, that the guy is a bit of a one of these first round kind of guys coming in, making their debut. And largely, if these guys are making their debut, first round guys, either they, meet that win condition, they get knocked out themselves, or they're losing on the cards. But usually if they're losing on the cards, they're fighting like, this more experienced type of guy coming in as they're like some hype prospect. But in Williams, not necessarily. He's not this overt experienced guy, this big UFC vet. So that was kind of the consideration for me. Like I said, I didn't look into it, but just kind of doing some number crunching and whatnot. I thought a violence bet would be a decent bet here. But like I said, there just isn't enough tape on Imavov for me to make a solid assessment. But just based on numbers, I think any sort of under 2.5, as you touched on, legs, fight to start round 3, I think a violence bet in this spot's probably the way to go.
Legs. So next fight we're coming up on, we got Joshua Kulabao and Charles Jourdain. Legs, you want to start with it?
Yeah, so I actually, probably contrary to what you'll talk about a little later, I actually did parlay up Jourdain here. I think that even where it's sitting, where it is right now, I think it has some value. I think that, honestly, Kulabao was a step down from Fili in his last fight, and Fili's a top 15 gatekeeper, honestly. And I think that Jourdain had some competitive minutes there and arguably could have won the fight. I know a lot of people thought that he did end up winning that fight. But yeah, I don't really rate Kulabao's entries that great, and I don't rate his positional control that great. I kind of think that Jourdain's going to find a knockout here. So I parlayed Jourdain with somebody later in the card for 2 units, and I played 1 unit Jourdain inside the distance at plus 100.
Nice. Plus 100. That's a pretty nice line. That's right. That's not bad at all. Quinn, what do you got?
Getting a minus 440 down to plus 100. So
and that's
a good spot. Consider.
It's not bad at all. I haven't looked into this fight too much. I do not remember being that impressed with Kulabao. And I don't know however you say his name.
Kulabao. Come on, Quinn.
Kulabao. Yeah. Yeah. Kulabao. And I'm not super high on Jourdain. I mean, he's a decent fighter, but I don't know. I don't really have much to say. I need to look into this fight a little bit more. So for now, it's a pass.
What do you got, Luke?
So I actually did make a play here, untracked. FanDuel had the under 2.5 hanging at like minus 112, and no other book was anywhere near that.
That's crazy.
So I jumped on that. I think it's a perfect opportunity for a violence bets. Once again, it's an untracked play, not tipped play, but in terms of how it plays out, I definitely think Jourdain should probably roll here. But in terms of the current line of where it's at, I do think it's a little disrespectful to Kulabao. Like, Jourdain's a guy who I think does have some upside and some potential, but there are just still so many defensive issues that I have with his game. And I feel like that, canvas snap is waiting to happen, and it's going to happen at some time. Now, I don't think Kulabao is some world beater, but he's definitely a guy who packs a bit of a punch. And with Jourdain, when he comes in, he's kind of like a dichotomous type fighter to me. Like, sometimes we'll see him be more passive. He'll come on he'll stay on the outside, strike from the outside. Then sometimes he'll just be super forward pressure, super aggressive. And we've seen a little bit of both from him. And so it's kind of those big, assuming we're seeing that kind of big flurry pressure from Jourdain, I think that just speaks nightmares to Kulabao. But if we see a little bit more patient Jourdain, kind of trying to fight from the outside, because Kulabao's not like a super high output type guy. I think, when those entries do come, I think that can leave Jourdain open for a knockout from Kulabao. And we've touched on too, Jourdain's defensive wrestling is not good, despite him being a brown belt. He is pretty active off of his back, but he's not like this massive submission or sweep threat, or a guy who's getting back to his feet relatively quickly. I don't rate Kulabao's wrestling necessarily pretty high, but we have seen him go to it at times. So I think if you are to play this fight straight, I do actually think the value side is Kulabao here. But once again, to me, it's two striking-based fighters who have both defensive flaws in terms of their striking. I love to hit those under 2.5s there when guys have shown power and defensive flaws on the feet as well. So I'd be somewhat surprised if we see this fight go 3 rounds. It could be one of those situations where it's a 3-round war, both defensively flawed guys, and it is what it is, kind of like an Omar Morales Benitez type fight. But I'm willing to lose in at minus 112. I think that number has a crazy amount of value.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me preface this by saying to our Canadian brethren, I love you guys. Please don't banish me or ghost me after what I say about Canada's chosen son. But I'm not the biggest fan of Charles Jourdain, to be completely honest with you guys. I think people see, look, he's dynamic. I don't think there's anybody that would question that. He's obviously great finishing ability. But, at 145, there's a difference between taking a guy with incredible finishing ability, like, say a Francis Ngannou at heavyweight, who really in that division can maximize that to a degree that, the lack of skills elsewhere doesn't really matter. And then 145, where the level of skill you're facing on a fight-to-fight basis is just absurdly different. And so it's like, I think Jourdain's very dynamic. He's obviously a good finisher with power, but he has virtually no process to his game. The guy is very, very hittable. You see it every fight. Des Green, he's fine. He's not he's probably a below average striker. He outstruck Jourdain at distance and landed 54% of the strikes he attempted. That's a pretty rough look. We saw it with Phillips. He was basically touching him up at will, at range. And then, to boot, he's got no takedown defense. Like, it's not just like, oh, he got taken down by Des Green and Phillips. It's like the guy doesn't have a sprawl. Like, he basically, when you grab him, he just kind of keels over or looks like a weak guillotine. And then when he's on his back, he does kind of the Edmund thing and turtles up on his face. And so it's just like every time he's faced somebody like Taylor Lapalus, got him down over and over. Laramie, and obviously Laramie's a good wrestler, but undersized for the division, got him down at will over and over and held him there. Phillips, honestly, Phillips is a pretty good wrestler, but the last 2 takedowns he landed, and I literally just watched this fight, weren't very good entries. He just kind of like rushed at him and he just kind of keeled over. And look, I don't think Joshua Kulabao is anything special at all. He got dominated by Jalen Turner, but look, first of all, that was short notice. Luke, I saw you mention this in your article too today, which is a good read, guys. Check it out, swrmma.com. Quick plug. But, Jalen Turner, much bigger. 155, who's fought at 170. He's on short notice there. Turner, massive reach advantage, massive height advantage, massive physicality advantage. Just abused him in the clinch. And Turner's got great takedown defense, and he couldn't get him down. Bit of a different story here. Look, I think Jourdain's is a better striker than Kulabao is. Don't get me wrong. But Kulabao went from having a 5-inch height disadvantage and 5-inch reach disadvantage to a 4-inch reach advantage here and a 1-inch height advantage. He also attempts a lot of takedowns. And, I've seen him put hooks in on the back before. And as I mentioned, Jourdain will give the backup. And so it's like I'm looking at, look, is it possible that Jourdain's probably going to be improving every fight, and he could have improved enough to stop his takedowns and put him to sleep. And I don't think Kulabao is some elite grappler. So, look, it won't be shocking if he blanks him completely here. But, like, I don't really see a justification personally for Jourdain being better than, like, minus 200 in this spot. Like I said, I think the holes, the defensive liabilities, both standing and when it comes to the grappling, are just too wide to really trust him there, especially against a guy who's shown a willingness both regionally and in the UFC to attempt takedowns in decent volume. So I put a unit on Kulabao right before we went on at about plus 350. I think it's a decent line. I know I'm being a minority. I still love you, Canada. I love most of your fighters, but not Charles Jourdain. Anyway, we move on. We got Carlos, the natural-born killer Condit, and Court McGee. Anybody have a play here other than me before we get into this? No? Okay. So I'll jump in then. All right. So I played McGee for a unit and a half minus 110. Basic thinking is, look, it's a big step down in competition for Condit. I get that. But, he hasn't fought in 2 years. He's looked more and more old and stiff, like the older he's got, like in each progressive fight. But I do think he's technically better on the feet than McGee is. But the thing is, on the feet, like, you're going to see, McGee's going to push a pace. He's going to push volume. He might be getting landed. Like, Condit might land the cleaner shots here, but McGee's durable as fuck and is going to keep coming and be throwing more. But in a kickboxing match, I'd probably favor Condit slightly. Where the big difference is here is really just in the grappling. And, I get McGee's not a good wrestler, but he's attempted 20 takedowns across his last 3 fights. He's fairly reliable to attempt, between 5 and 7 takedowns a fight. And Condit's defended takedowns at 36%. He's one of the all-time worst defensive grapplers we've ever seen. And on top of that, when he gets on his back, he doesn't have traditional get-ups. He tries to throw up subs. And McGee's actually got a decent understanding of positional control. He's never been subbed. And so it's like, if I think, even with a slight lean to Condit, that it's going to be competitive on the feet and that McGee's likely to land 2 to 3 takedowns here and get minutes of top time, I just don't see how he's priced worse than minus 150 to minus 185. So yeah, I played McGee for a unit and a half here. Blags, what do you think of this fight?
So I was actually listening to MMA by the Numbers podcast earlier today, and I wanted to bring up a couple good points he brought up on their podcast. So Condit has been taken down 55 times in the UFC, which is the most in UFC history. Condit over the last 5 years has a 22% takedown defense. And in McGee over the last 5 years, while he does average 9 takedowns per 15 minutes, he has a 14% takedown accuracy. And he's landed 2 or fewer takedowns in 12 of his 15 fights. So adding all of that together and the fact that Condit's coming off a 2-year layoff and is 2-8 in his last 10 fights, I can't really trust him here. And at the same time, I don't really want to be backing McGee here. So it's kind of just a stay away fight for me. I think I don't really want my money anywhere near this fight.
Quinn, how about you?
Yeah, no, I definitely like McGee here. I with Condit's like lack of takedown defense, his 2-year layoff. Like you guys have all touched on like on all of the points. Like, I just don't see how you could play Condit here, even if it like really was at evens. I mean, I'm not going out of my way to play McGee just yet. I was kind of thinking about playing him if he got to dog money. Um, he's old as well, but he's at least been active, and he landed 120 significant strikes against Brady, which is pretty impressive. So I definitely think that like the volume upside is still there for him. And who knows where Condit's at? Like it's just not a good idea to lay your money on a guy who's been in so many fights and so many wars. And um, so yeah, I definitely think that the play would be McGee if you got him at like evens. But as of right now, he's like what, -145, -150. I'd probably just stay away from that in general. But yeah, my pick is McGee for the fight for sure.
What do you got, Luke?
Yeah, so another one of the fights in my 3-0 for me. In full transparency, I didn't do a big deep dive into tape on this one, but I am largely very familiar with both guys and what they bring to the table. I think essentially the line is relatively correct with a slight lean to McGee, but then again, it's two guys who I think are just relatively over the hill. I think McGee definitely is probably going to have the volume advantage here if he does take kind of, that path to least resistance, just lands takedowns, even if he's able to get a few. Condit's really struggled in terms of getting back to his feet. I think it's definitely a very winnable fight for Court McGee, but at the same time, if we see like old school aggressive Carlos Condit who's just going to come forward and spam volume, like McGee has proven to be like durable in the sense that the dude's, I think he's only been knocked out once in like 15 UFC fights or something like that, but dude has shown, at least in recent years, that he's starting to get tagged a little bit more often. He's starting to get hurt. So now Condit's dangerous, but then again, now he's 36. He's coming off a near 2-year layoff. Where is Carlos Condit at in 2020? To me, it's one of those fights where it's just, let's just let the two old guys fight and let's see what happens. I don't really want my fight, or I don't want my money anywhere near it. But yeah, I mean, I think if you got in on McGee, like around like maybe evens, I think that was probably value. But I think at current price, it's probably right around where it should be.
Yeah, agreed. Well, I don't agree since I played McGee, but I was reading a message from C. So quick interjection here. He said to let the people know that he's mentally distraught by the fact that he had 7 units tied to Cadiz in a fight, and he's in a mental.
What was the last part? What was the last part of that?
He's in a mental ward right now.
He's in a mental.
But he may jump on at the end of the podcast, so we'll see. But we move on. I just realized that I have all of my bets in the first 6 fights, and I'm going to be at a freaking first communion party. I'm going to have to like set a fire in the back of the house or something and get my wife's ass out of there. This is not great. Anyway, we move on. We got Daquan Townsend, Dusko Todorovic. I think this is like the 3rd time Dusko is supposed to be debuted here.
Yeah.
Luke, I believe you have a play here.
Yep. So, Lags, you're going to be super proud of me here, man. This is my 2nd parlay of 2020. I am not a big parlay guy. I do not parlay very often. But I think on this card, I found a nice little sneaky spot for one. So,
I agree.
Dusko is my first leg of a parlay with a fighter later on in the card that we will get to. Ultimately, I think Daquan Townsend is pretty much KO or bust. Like, I think he's one of these guys who's just like a solid regional scene fighter, but I just don't necessarily think he's UFC caliber. Like if you really watch his fights, like what does he really do well? To me, he falls into that kind of brawler type category, but even in that brawler type category, he's like a patient brawler. Like he's not a guy who's going to like come forward, spam volume. He's kind of a guy who's going to sit back, wait, find his shots. He's got a nasty head kick, a massive overhand right that he just wings from absolute hell. But outside of that, not high volume. Takedown defense, not good. Brown belt in jiu-jitsu, but when we have seen him taken down in recent years, he's not sweeping. He's not threatening submission attempts. He's not getting back to his feet. His cardio is not good. That's probably one of the big knocks on him for me, is that he's a guy who's sucking wind a lot and a guy who's just not doing a whole lot in general, a la Cadiz last week. Jesus Christ. But so my thing with Dusko is, like, I don't think he's like this world-class fighter necessarily, but like literally if he comes forward, I think he's the better striker here. He's got a nice 1-2. He kind of has that darting in and out style, which against a guy like Daquan, who utilizes essentially no footwork, who's relatively stationary, that darting in and out nature, I feel like is just a nightmare for Daquan. Whether Dusko finishes him, I don't know. Daquan's proven to be pretty durable, but I think from optics judging, point fighting perspective, Dusko is going to be doing more here. So to me, if Daquan lands that Hail Mary KO, my first leg busts. But to me, he's another one of these guys. I don't see how he wins minutes in this fight in any stretch of the imagination. So instead of laying like a 3-4 unit bet on Dusko, I'm fine with lowering down my unit size risk, throwing him in a parlay, and I think it's going to be a pretty easy cash.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't bet it because after the beating I took last week, I felt like the MMA gods were punishing me for paying. But I actually think there's probably value on Dusko at minus 325. I agree with most of what you said, Luke. And in particular, while we've seen Daquan's got power, you've pointed this out before, but guys who can't fight behind their jab are just begging to get grappled. And like we've seen Devin Lewis hold him in the clinch, no problem. Devin Lewis isn't very good and he's small. We've seen Devin Clark hold him in the clinch, no problem. What's Dusko like to do? He loves to go forward and clinch you up. So like I honestly think this probably should be like minus 500, to be honest with you, like 85% or so. Like Daquan's pretty much got to land a big shot when he's coming in. Otherwise, he's just going to end up either pinned against the fence or pinned against fence and then getting taken down over and over again. But I pretty much think it's going to be one of these fights where you just see Dusko get like 12 or 13 minutes of control time and Daquan look angry again because he never learned how to circle out in the gym. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be pretty easy work for Dusko. I honestly can't hate on anybody playing it straight. I'm just like, after last week, scarred from Kai Kara France, so which was a stupid bet, bad bet. But anyway, I can't blame anybody for playing Dusko. We're just parlaying him up. What do you got, Legs?
Yeah, kind of agree. Keep it kind of simple there. I think that, Townsend pretty much has to land the power shots here, but the problem is he doesn't really set anything up. He's got a good straight shot. He's got good high kick, good clinch knees, but he doesn't really set it up that great. And like you touched on, once he hits the ground, that's pretty much it. He pretty much doesn't have any way of getting back up because his cardio is so bad. And I really think that it wouldn't shock me if Townsend actually misses weight here on the scales. I think that he's cutting a ton of weight, and that's another real big problem to why his cardio is where it is. So, yeah, I can't really hate the play on Dusko here. Just not really playing it myself. But I think after this fight, we kind of see Townsend cut unless they need a late notice guy for one of these COVID fights.
Quinn?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you guys are saying. I've never bet Daquan Townsend. I've never wanted to bet Daquan Townsend. The guy is honestly he's pretty awful, like everywhere. I remember there was people when they were trying to convince us that Townsend, I think it was in the Devon Lewis, Townsend actually had a chance there. And I guess he kind of made it close. But overall, like, Townsend, he just outside of, like you guys said, outside of finishing ability, he just doesn't really have much to his game. He's beating up a bunch of cans in the scene. I think maybe they might like his length, but I just don't really see him winning any fights here at this level. I haven't really looked at at Dusko at all, but honestly, like, I'm not looking at playing Townsend ever at all in my betting career. And yeah, I don't really have much mouth about just saying Townsend sucks. So
I may or may not have placed the bet on Daquan Townsend once upon a time against not afraid to own it. Never again, as they say. We move on. This is going to be a really fun fight, actually. I'm pretty excited for it. We got Kyler Phillips making his second fight in the UFC, taking on Cameron Ellis, debuting, making his first fight. Lags, I think you would play, right?
Yeah, I actually have two plays here. So I actually think, so I think these guys both have a ton of crazy offensive output for as long as this fight is going to last. I mean, similar to Imavov we touched earlier on, Ellis is kind of in the same bracket here where he's just a lot of meme shit and it's a lot of early round one finishes. So to touch on that, Ellis, 13 of his 14 fights have ended inside the distance, and 12 of those have ended inside the first round. And Phillips, 5 of his 8 fights have ended inside the distance, and all 5 in the first round. So I'm playing a violence bet here. I'm playing half a unit on the fight does not start round 2 at plus 194, and 1 unit on the fight does not start round 3 at minus 128. And I kind of think this fight ends inside the first round, and I think Phillips is on the winning side here.
Quinn, what about you?
This is like the only fight that I actually didn't look into at all yet. It's just been a busy week for me, so I have no analysis on it.
Luke?
Yeah, so I'm with Legs. I absolutely love violence in this fight. I got 3 units on the fight does not go to decision at minus 220. I was kind of contemplating playing that under 1.5, but I have a sneaking suspicion that could potentially be a bit of a trap. So I'm going to kind of play this one a little bit safe. But ultimately, you got a guy in this else dude who's just going to absolutely come out and throw the kitchen sink at you. He's fought a bunch of bums. Like he's like 6-0 in his last 6, but his combined record of competition is 8-16. So he's just running through nobodies. So with that, that's kind of where my hesitation is with the under 1.5, because we see these guys coming out, running through everybody. And now when they can't run through somebody because they're fighting a much tougher guy, the fights largely look extended. But at the same time, once again, he fights to entertain. He leaves a lot of defensive holes. He does have some grappling upside once again against lower level fighters, but a guy in Kyler Phillips, not a guy who I'm overtly high on, comes out of O'Malley's camp. He's another guy kind of likes to fight long, dart in and out, kicks, big straight punches, has some grappling upside. I believe he's a brown belt as well. So it's another one of these fights where I think both guys leave defensive holes in both the striking and the grappling, at least more so in the striking and the grappling. They're more so aggressive in terms of attacking what they're going to do, which is also going to leave opportunities for both opponents. So honestly, Legs, if one of these guys come out here and it starches each other in the first round, I would not be surprised either. But I'm going to play it a little bit safe just because that whole first round narrative on Ellis, I don't necessarily think that could prove credence. And Kyler could just kind of play that avoid waiting game. He knows that this guy's going to come out hot right out of the gate. He could just kind of play avoid. Ellis gasses, and then he finishes him late in the second or third. So that's just kind of my take on it. But I'd be really shocked if we see this one hit the cards.
And I know Magic actually. Sorry, real quick, jump in. I know Magic talked on the Ellis sub a little bit. I think that might even be a good play too. Sub round 1. I think he definitely has a chance to jump in guard here and jump in for a guillotine here. We've seen it.
He's kind of like a minner. He's kind of like a minner in a sense. He'll attack shit. He'll go after stuff. For win or lose, he'll go after stuff. So
I'm kind of curious what that round 1 sub is.
I'm with you guys, and if you guys want to go, if anybody who's watching hasn't seen it and wants to watch a fucking insane fight, go watch Ellis and Damo Whedon from Cage Warriors 85. Shit is fucking bananas. But yeah, I mean, Ellis, I think he sucks. Like, I'm pretty sure he's horrible.
Yeah.
Or like, he comes out like a goddamn firecracker every single fight. So, I mean, he's entertaining. I agree with basically other things you guys said. The only thing I'll say is I actually kind of like Kyler Phillips. He wasn't great on The Ultimate Fighter, but he's super young. And, I had read that he was basically doing martial arts since he was like a small kid, who was kind of forced into, I don't know about forced, but his parents like pushed him into it young. And I just kind of wonder if he was getting burnt out because he's looked like a completely different fighter his last couple of fights. I bet Silva against him in his last fight, and he absolutely wrecked him and cleaned up a lot of the holes that we had seen in the past. So I'm expecting Phillips to put it on him here. And, yeah, I like the inside the distance. I have no play. But, yeah, I think this is a sneaky good bet for fight of the night, to be honest.
And real quick, I was just looking at it. So Ellis sub round 1 is plus 3,600.
3,600 for Ellis sub round 1? That's pretty interesting. We move on. We get Vendramini, Juliana Pena. Quinn, you have a bet. What do you got?
Yeah, no, I have I don't know how much I have. I think I have 2 units. 2 units on. Sorry, I'm so underprepared today. 2 units on GDR. I got in on her. I don't even remember. I don't remember what I got in on her. Probably, I think I got in on her.
I think it's rated at minus 115.
I think I got her. Yeah, close to evens. I just think this is a really, really bad fight for Pena here. Her path to victory is by winning rounds is obviously clinching up and getting the takedowns here. And GDR, she's only been taken down by Amanda Nunes and by Julia Budd, and that was all the way back in 2012. And on the feet, she's pretty hittable on the feet. Like she'll rush forward without setting anything up, and so I just see GDR's counter game, just countering her with shots the entire time. I do think she's kind of durable, so I could see this going the full 3 rounds. But I just really don't think that this is a very good fight for Pena in general. I think this is a solid fight for GDR. So I had I remember when I opened a GDR as a dog, and I was really, really confused and trying to think about what I was missing here. I just don't really think that, I mean, if she does get GDR down, she's probably going to keep her there for sure. But, Nico, she's not a very good striker at all. And she was landing shots on Pena, that, and with Pena's time off that she had taken before that fight, with the whole COVID shutdown, who knows how much work, how much good camps Pena's actually gotten in, and you want a really, really solid camp if you're fighting someone in GDR. So yeah, I had no problem playing her at evens. I think this is just a really solid matchup for GDR here.
Luke, how about you?
So actually, that Frey fight was actually not in my 3 not for me, but ended up passing on it. So this is actually the second fight in my 3 not for me. So originally going into this, I thought I would be betting Durandamy as well, but after kind of doing tape on it, I don't know, man. I don't like it. Like, I get that she stuffed. I think it was 17 total. Pennington and Holm went 0 for 17 on takedowns against Durandamy. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then against Nunes, obviously WMMA GOAT, but my big thing in this fight is when Jermaine Durandamy was taken down, there just wasn't that sense of urgency from her to get back to her feet. And so if in the sense that Pena is able to land takedowns here, I'm not confident that Jourdain is going to have this overt sense that I got to at least butt scoot, work to the fence. I don't think she's going to sit there and sweep Juliana Pena or really be able to attack subs. She's got to butt scoot, work back to the fence, stand up, create range, and do her thing. But I just really haven't seen that. She's either going to hold and hope for a rough stand-up, or she's just going to block and try to defend strikes. So I personally think that Pena's wrestling is a little bit overrated, but I do also have to say, if she does get her down, I just don't have this confidence that Jourdain is not going to get controlled for 2, 3, 4 plus minutes in those rounds. But every fight does start on the feet, and at space, she's going to light Juliana Pena up like a Christmas tree. I'm pretty confident in that. But once again, it just comes down to, if Pena is able to get those takedowns, I'm just not convinced that Jourdain has this excellent get-up game. So, yeah, it's no bet for me. In my opinion, if you were to bet this fight, I would want like plus 150 on either girl. It's one of those fights where which girl gets off on her game, I think, is really going to have success, because I think it actually might be a decent live betting opportunity, because if we go 5 minutes and Pena isn't really able to have any sort of strong wrestling success, well, GDR might be chalked up a little bit, but that also still might be a solid live betting spot, even with GDR at chalk. If Pena's not able to really have any wrestling success in 5 minutes, you might be able to get some value even on GDR live. But it's one of those fights where I think, people kind of want to plant their flag on. I personally don't want any part of it, but I do also think this could look a lot like the Aspen Ladd fight, where Pena just rushes and JDR just sparks her, because her defensive striking is not good either. So I see both girls having varying amounts of success in this fight. It's just about who gets off on their game, but I want no part of it from a betting perspective.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I want no part of it. I similar to you, Luke, I went into tape thinking, I might bet GDR. And, for a lot of the tape, I thought that too, because, GDR obviously traditionally has had, issues with people who shoot at her legs, not really like in the clinch. And then I saw the Holm fight, and I was just like, I can't bet this. Holly held her on the fence with ease. Pena was able to pin Shevchenko to the fence. If Holly could pin GDR there, Pena can. Now, that said, GDR can obviously land shots in the clinch. My issue with it really, though, especially at chalk, is that from an optics perspective, even if she's landing clinch shots, it's a bad look. And, Magic touched on it in the comment section a little bit. But pretty much, and like Quinn touched on it too, if this fight hits the mat, GDR probably doesn't get up here and could potentially even be finished. Now, how often Pena gets her down, I don't know. But I think if she attempts 6 or 7 takedowns, she's likely to get 1 or 2. So it's like I'm leaning Pena, to be honest. There's a reason I haven't bet Pena yet. It's something that we all know that I probably shouldn't say on stream, so I'm not going to. But I will say this: if it gets to plus 150, I'm going to bet Pena. But like Luke said it too, I could easily see her getting sparked with how she comes forward. She almost comes forward like Johnny Walker at distance and very easy to hit. So it's just it's a tough fight to call. My gut is Pena's probably going to win this on gross clinch optics, but yeah, it's a hard fight to call. Legs, how about you?
Yeah, keep it short and simple. Kind of what Luke said. I think that whoever's going to get off their game plan here is going to look like a minus 200 favorite here. I think that pretty much as bad as Pena is on the feet is as bad as GDR is on the ground. So that's kind of why I just want no interest in it. I do lean with GDR, but I think that if she's put on her back at any point in this fight, that she could definitely find herself submitted. So, that's kind of my take on it. Similar points to you. I think if Pena gets the significant dog money, maybe that would interest me, but ultimately it's just a pass.
Yeah, agreed. We move on and we go to co-main event. It's a weird fight to have in the co-main slot, but it should be a fun one. We got Jourdain de Castro, Carlos Felipe. Luke, I'll start with you. What do you got?
Yeah, so you guys know I'm a Jourdain de Castro truther. I love me some Jourdain de Castro. I think the guy's got decent upside, but in regards to this particular matchup, as we know about Jourdain de Castro, those leg kicks are just a massive component of his game. And when we talk about Carlos Felipe, he's kind of one of these prodding, going forward type heavyweights who just doesn't utilize a whole lot of head movement, a whole lot of lateral footwork. He stands very heavy on that lead leg, and I think that's something that Jourdain is going to be able to expose here. And he's another one of these guys. He's not just a leg kick guy per se. He's one of those guys kind of even similar to a Chris Gutierrez. He kicks your leg 2 or 3 times. The fight is completely altered from that point on. We saw it even, in the Greg Hardy fight to some extent, but then Jourdain broke his foot and then got outpointed over the course of 15 minutes. But then again, even in that first round, I'm very surprised at how all 3 judges scored that first round for Greg Hardy. I think that's a little crazy to me if we're talking about damage, but that's also credence to how judges just do not score leg kicks. But in this fight, I think it's going to clearly hurt and disable any sort of movement that Felipe does have. He's a guy who is relatively fast for the heavyweight division, but he's not overtly technical. I think Jourdain is the better fighter here, and we've seen Felipe kind of rush in at certain points here, and we saw what happened when Justin Tafa did that too. He put him out cold. He's got some nice hooks, but I will say also as a detriment to Jourdain, he can get a little bit wild at times. He can rush in himself, and this is heavyweight. Anybody can put anybody out. But if we're talking about upsides and ceilings, I think De Castro is the much better fighter here. I just don't see Felipe being long for the UFC. Fat Castro wins, kills the Brazilian hamster.
He is an ugly looking guy, to be honest.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't have a play here. I might Brazilian hamster is a great call, but like I don't have a play here. I may end up making a play if the line.
I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry, John. Real quick, actually, this is the fight that closes out my parlay with Dusko.
Oh,
I forgot to say that 2 units on Dusko and Jourdain at -115.
So I'm going to talk about the fat hamster now. The Brazilian hamster. I actually don't hate him. I think he's got decent boxing. Not much else. Clearly, he doesn't have much of a ground game. But he throws in decent volume, and I think in the pocket, his boxing's okay. And so, like, I expect Castro should be able to take care of business here, just because. To Luke's point, those leg kicks are so devastating that, like, I think he's just going to be able to get them off. And the fact that Felipe's game is so boxing based, I expect he's going to be very, very heavy on the lead leg. So I think they'll be there. My issue is I think if Felipe can tank them and just not really get badly compromised from them, he can probably get in the pocket and have real success there. Like, I don't really, obviously Jourdain's got power, but I don't think his boxing game is much at all. And his hands are fast, but he doesn't let him go enough. That's I know he broke his foot in the Hardy fight, but once the leg kick was gone, he just really didn't have any answer on the feet for his hands. And so, like, yeah, I agree Jourdain should be a good size favorite here. But like if this got to like the +230 to +250 range, I honestly might consider playing Felipe, because you never really know with these gigantic heavyweights how well they could take that kind of damage. And like, if Felipe can take the kicks, which I'm very strongly suspect that he can, but like if he can, like I think it's going to be a very competitive, greasy fight. But like I said, I think Jourdain could be like -200-ish. What do you got, Legs?
Yeah, so similar theme for me on the card. I like violence in this fight, to be honest. So I have 2 plays on this fight. So I have a half unit on a KO in round 1 at +175, and then I have this is the end of my 2-unit parlay with Jourdain with Castro here, closing out at -139. So yeah, I mean Luke touched on a lot of points, to be honest, for Castro, but I pretty much think that leg kick's going to pay huge dividends early and often in that fight, and he has a sneaky good body kick as well, which I think he's going to hit the Brazilian hamster right in the stomach a ton, hit him a ton in the legs, because he's going to be so plodding forward, coming at him, that eventually he's just going to be able to KO him. And I think that for Felipe, to be honest, same thing here, like as we touched on earlier in the card, it's a lot of meme shit. It's a lot of meme round 1 KOs that find him on the winning side. So I really don't put a ton of stock into it. I just kind of think he's one of those lower end heavyweight fighters. So I think that this is pretty much the Castro all day. So I don't really hate the -280 money line.
Quinn?
Yeah, I agree with John here. I think I had said earlier on the group chat that I don't really hate a play on Felipe here at the current price of like +240, +250 dog. I do favor De Castro, but like John made a lot of good points. Like if he can take the leg kicks, I definitely think he has the better boxing, and he seems to be pretty damn durable. I mean, like when he was and I know Spivak's not the best striker, but that fight was competitive, and it was like 1-1 going into the 3rd round. And Spivak had to really go to his wrestling to actually put a stamp on that fight. So yeah, like I think you're going to tell pretty early in the fight, like who's going to win, like if he can take the leg kicks or if he can't. But if he can't, then I definitely don't hate a plan Felipe. Heavyweight, he hits kind of hard, and he throws volume, and De Castro, he has times when he just doesn't really throw volume, which I really don't like to see. So yeah, the play for me is going to be the pick is going to be De Castro, but man, if that line keeps creeping up, I don't know, I might take a little stab at Felipe here. So.
All right, and then we move on to the main event. Does anybody have a play here before I get started with it? No? Cool. All right, main event of the evening, Holm, Aldana, whatever. But But basically, I don't know. I think it's lined right, to be honest. Like, obviously, Aldana's got the big volume edge, but like I did a pretty big deep dive on it, and like I don't think there's much of a betting edge here. Like, yeah, Aldana throws more in general, like in total, but you basically never see Holm. Like, Holm is not the kind of girl who's like Tyron Woodley, who's going to let someone throw at them and not throw back. Like, she actually out-attempted Cyborg at distance, actually didn't outland her, but she's reliable if the attempt strikes back, and Aldana is reliable to get punched in the face. So it's like I kind of expect, it's going to be a pretty close striking fight, and I give like a slight edge to Holm just because Holly will go for those dumb clinch positions that make the fight borderline unwatchable, but where she's winning minutes, like she did against Pennington, like she tried to do with Cyborg, like she did to GDR. And we've seen Aldana held in that spot by Pennington. So, Aldana seems like a strong girl. I think she's probably got the better finishing upside. She probably hits harder. But I think on the numbers, it's probably going to be pretty close. And I just give a slight lead to Holm just because I kind of think she can kind of assert her will there in the clinch. Lags, how about you?
Yeah, kind of similar opinion. I pre-tape was leaning Aldana, kind of thought the output, the physicality, everything would just be, in her favor. But I think that Holm pretty much knows how to win these kind of fights. Her output isn't the best these days. She's looking to work the clinch, work the cage push, and try to ground out a boring decision like she did against Pennington, as you touched on. So that's kind of what's giving me pause here. But like I put in my notes, as long as Aldana keeps her back off the cage, I think this fight is pretty much hers to lose. I think she's got the output, she's got the size, she's got everything to stop Holly here. So the lean would be Aldana, but I would need probably a decent dog money to probably take that, like maybe plus 125, plus 130.
Yeah, fair. I can't hate on any play at that size, to be honest. Quinn, how about you?
Yeah, no, pre-tape I was thinking about playing Aldana here. I do favor her, but like I just don't really trust my money on either side of this fight. Like I just don't really know how you can. I mean, Aldana is, she is pretty hittable. And I don't really like, like I know this is kind of something I haven't really talked about, but like her seems like, like when she's not winning fights, her confidence just gets away from her. And I just don't really like to see that at all. And Holm, she's a veteran of the game, like she's been around for a long time. And like Lax said, she's kind of gone away from like her volume striking. She's definitely worked the clinch a lot more and worked the cage push. She does what she needs to do to get the win, and that just kind of scares me. I just don't know if I trust Aldana enough to like circle off, defend the takedowns well enough to get off the cage. And the clinch in order to like work her game here. So yeah, it's a definite pass fight for me. I think it's actually a pretty good live betting opportunity, just because of where the line's at, and the fact that it is 5 rounds. So I do think you're going to find a point in the fight where you can get a pretty good read on who's going to win here. But pre-tape, I just don't really see how people can be confident laying their money on either side. So it's a pass for me, but the lean is definitely Aldana.
Luke, how about you?
So similar to Quinn, I thought like pre-tape I was probably going to be betting Aldana here. Did tape, and this fight ended up rounding out my 3-0 for me over at MMA Oddsbreaker. Cheap plug, guys. Check it out every Thursday, Friday. It's put out fights you should pass on, save your money on. So, yeah, you guys pretty much touched on it all. I guess I'll slightly disagree with you, John, in the sense that I actually think Holly has a bit more of the finishing upside here just because of that southpaw orthodox nature. I think that head kick of Holly Holm could spark Aldana in this fight. She's a little reckless when she comes in. She does utilize a lot of outside movement, but we've seen Holly kind of set some of these girls up at some point, especially that Betch Kohea fight. She kind of set her up, boom, hits there. And Aldana is just not one of these girls who I've seen address that defensive striking issue. And that's why, for me, it's hard to bet her, because at least at this point in her career, if you're not going to address that issue, that whole volume boxing nature, you guys hear me talk about it all the time. I love me some volume WMMA boxers. But when you start getting into this higher echelon and upper level of WMMA, that kind of starts to go out the window, especially now when you're fighting a girl who's probably one of the best counter strikers in WMMA right now, if not the best counter striker in WMMA history. So with that, I think Aldana needs to mind her P's and Q's. And you guys brought up a lot of good points in terms of Holly, going to that cage push. She went to that wrestling against Megan Anderson. Obviously, Aldana has like 92% takedown defense, but if Aldana gets too dicey on some shots or whatever, Holly could get a blast double. I wouldn't be surprised there either. But once again, I'm trying to factor more in terms of optics. And to me, unless Holly gets that crazy amount of cage push time, unless she hits her with a big head kick, doesn't finish her, hits her with a big punch, does some majorly significant thing in this fight, I do think we see this one go 5 rounds, and I think it's going to optically look better for Irina Aldana, and she gets a W here. Not a confident prediction by any means, not telling anybody to lay their money on either side. Kind of similar to JDR Pena, not necessarily from a stylistic perspective, but from a perspective of I would want at least plus 150 for bet consideration on either fighter, because it's not necessarily who's able to get off on their game, but there's just so many funky different considerations in this fight. It's kind of one of these plant your flag fights. Everybody wants to have an opinion on it, but I want none. I want none for me, but my pick is Aldana.
Yeah, I'm with you completely, Luke. So that rounds out the show this week. Like I said, some spots, I think we all have some plays here. It'll be fun. Hopefully we bounce back. It's got to happen one of these weeks, right? But next week looks a lot more promising. I'm just going to tell you guys right now who are watching, if you haven't looked at it, the line's already coming in a lot. Go look at Sewung Choi. That line is hilariously off. It's not going to be plus 250 when we go live next Wednesday. It was plus 360 earlier today. Thank me later. Anyway, thanks for coming out, guys. See, you'll be back next week. We'll be back same time as always. As usual, I'm your host, John Stargary, MMA. You can find me at MMA Fox, Lags at Lags_the Capper, Quinn at Orthodox1993, Luke at SWR_betting. Thanks for coming out, guys. We'll see you next week.